Pirate first reader Aloud Rsvp app in progress. A little machine that reads aloud how a broken computer, an Android phone, to ISON. A pile of zip files became a prototype for sovereign reading. There is a strange way to build software. You lose access to your computer. You have an Android phone. Your project is buried inside zip archives on GitHub. Your memory for which version was actually working is, shall we say, not a RAID array. And nevertheless, you keep going. That is how the pirate first sovereign reader is being built. Not in a corporate development lab. Not behind a product manager. Not with $1 million budget. From a phone. With AI assistants, open source components, Android's own speech engine, GitHub Actions, a lot of instinct, and an unreasonable refusal to give up. And eventually, F-Droid, freeware, for everyone. First, it reads aloud. This is the part one don't want buried beneath the engineering story. Pirate first reader reads text aloud. You can feed it a newsletter, article, chapter, dispatch, essay or other text and have the Android device speak it through its available text-to-speech voices. But it doesn't simply turn the screen into an audiobook player. It combines text-to-speech with Rsvp, rapid serial visual presentation. Words appear sequentially at a controlled focal point while the device can simultaneously speak them. The ambition is simple. Your eyes see the word. Your ears hear the word. The machine keeps them synchronized. That creates an entirely different reading experience. You aren't dragging your eyes across enormous blocks of text. You aren't necessarily staring at a conventional page. The reader becomes more like an instrument, a word, a voice, a rhythm, then the next word, and the next. Why build another reader? Because reading is one of the most important interfaces civilization has ever invented, and yet most digital reading software assumes that everyone reads the same way. They don't. Some people read visually, some listen, some alternate between the two, some comprehend better when auditory and visual information reinforce each other, some want to consume long-form writing while walking, some want to listen to newsletters, some want to slow down, some want to accelerate, some simply want a reading tool that isn't trying to sell them something every 30 seconds. Pirate first reader is an experiment in giving the reader control over the temporal dimension of reading, not merely greater than what are you reading, but greater than at what rhythm do you want language to arrive. The word is not a unit of equal weight. This is where the project becomes technically interesting. A conventional speed setting might effectively say 500 words per minute, but language doesn't actually behave like that. I and anti-disestablishmentarianism are both technically one word. They are not remotely equivalent perceptual objects. Punctuation changes things too. A period deserves a breath. A comma may deserve a smaller pause. A long word may need additional visual dwell time, and syllabic complexity matters. The latest repository source actually turned out to contain a more evolved, syllable-based timing model than the APK we had initially been treating as our baseline. That was an important discovery. It meant we couldn't simply take the proposed v6.6 algorithm and paste it over the existing implementation. We had to stop, compare, understand, preserve what was already better, then modify only what actually needed modification. That is where the project stands now. The four v6.6 problems. The current v6.6 work revolves around four areas. 1. Linguistic timing. Make the dwell time respond intelligently to word complexity rather than simply applying a crude linear length penalty. 2. Word mapping. Create an explicit character to word map so Android's speech engine can tell the visual Rsvp engine exactly which word is being spoken. 3. Native speech synchronization. Use Android TTS callbacks to keep the visual word and spoken word synchronized. 4. Browser mode synchronization. Replace a crude flat timing interval with word-specific timing, so the visual engine doesn't revert to mechanical metronome behavior when using a browser speech path. The important discovery is that some of this functionality is already more sophisticated in the repository than it was in the APK, so we're not rebuilding v6.6 from scratch. We're performing controlled surgery. The I development story. There is another reason this project interests me. I am not pretending that I wrote all of this code manually. I didn't, and I don't think pretending otherwise makes software more sovereign. I am using AI as part of the development process. In this case, ChatGPT Go has been the principal collaborator during the build process, helping reason through Android architecture, WebView TTS integration, GitHub Actions, debugging, version recovery, and the increasingly Byzantine relationship between zip archives and source files. But there are limits. Literally, at one point the available AI working capacity became a bottleneck. The project was not finished. The computer was unavailable. The phone was the development workstation, and the source history had become difficult to reconstruct manually. So another AI entered the picture. Claude. The free tier turned out to be unexpectedly useful. Claude was able to inspect the now public GitHub repository, discover that the repository was actually storing complete project zips, identify that there were already two v6.6 archives, download and inspect the source, and, most importantly, discover that the repository contained a more evolved word delay implementation than the APK we had been using as our presumed baseline. That changed everything. Instead of blindly patching the wrong version, Claude stopped and began comparing the actual source. That is what I mean by salvage. The project didn't require one AI to be perfect. It required the tools to remain useful when one path hit a wall. The software is being built for people, not a store. The eventual destination is important. Pirate first reader is intended to become freeware and open source software distributed through F-Droid. F-Droid is particularly appropriate because its model is fundamentally different from The dominant commercial app store paradigm. It exists specifically to distribute free and open source Android applications, and that matters because Android itself is entering a new phase. The F-Droid question. Google is introducing Android developer verification. Google describes it as an additional security layer designed to make it harder for bad actors to distribute harmful applications. Its current timeline says the first enforcement phase begins September 30th, 2026, in Brazil, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand, with a global expansion plan for 2027. Google also says it will provide an advanced flow for power users and that sideloading remains possible. F-Droid sees the matter very differently. Its position is that centralized developer verification could fundamentally undermine Android's tradition of independent software distribution, particularly for repositories such as F-Droid that operate outside Google's commercial ecosystem. F-Droid has explicitly called the policy a threat to free software distribution. That disagreement is not trivial. It is ultimately a question of who gets to authorize software. Google says security. F-Droid asks authority. Pirate first asks, can we have both security and sovereignty? I think we should. The beautiful irony, we are building a reader whose purpose is to make information more accessible. It reads aloud. It can display language at controlled speed. It can potentially make long-form writing easier to consume. It is designed to be free, and we want it distributed through an ecosystem whose entire purpose is to preserve the freedom to install software. That makes F-Droid more than a convenient app store for this project. It becomes part of the philosophy. No subscription, no ad machine, no empire. The goal is not to turn Pirate First Reader into another platform. There is no grand plan to capture your attention and sell it. No. Premium reading speed unlocked. No. Subscribe to continue listening. No. Your reading history has been optimized for advertisers. The dream is much smaller, and therefore, perhaps, much more radical. Build the tool. Give it away. Publish the source. Let people inspect it. Let people fork it. Let someone else improve it. The reader is also a prototype for something bigger. The sovereign reader is deliberately modest, but its architecture points toward a broader idea. What if personal software could become small, portable, inspectable infrastructure rather than another cloud dependency? What if your reading machine didn't need a corporate account? What if your texts didn't need to pass through a centralized platform? What if the voice came from the device in your hand? What if the reading algorithm belonged to everyone? What if an author could distribute a document and a reader could simply read it? No gatekeeper required. The computer can wait. The funny part is that the project has actually taught us something about resilience. The computer is currently unavailable, so the phone became the workstation. The repository was confusing, so we opened it. The zip archives were multiplying, so we stopped guessing. The APK was not the same as the latest source, so we discovered the difference. ChatGPT hit a working limit. Claude's free tier picked up the investigation. The project survived because the development process itself was distributed. That may be the most pirate-first thing about it. Next stop, F-Droid. There is still work to do. The current source needs to be compared carefully. The minimum safe v6.6 changes need to be identified. The Android build needs to succeed. The APK needs to be tested on an actual phone. The voice synchronization needs to behave. Landscape mode needs to work. The Rsvp timing needs to feel right. And eventually the project needs to meet F-Droid's packaging and review requirements. But the destination is now clear. Pirate first sovereign reader. A free reader. A reader that reads aloud. A reader that respects the rhythm of language. A reader built with AI assistance but not dependent upon one AI. A reader intended to remain free. A reader intended to belong to its users. And perhaps, in a world increasingly obsessed with controlling distribution, that is a sufficiently pirate-like ambition. Pirate first, read faster, listen deeper, own the machine. The sovereign reader, v6.6 freeware open source destination, F-Droid. Development assisted by ChatGPT, Go and Claude. Built from an Android phone while the computer is away.
Sovereignty. Freedom. For everyone.
Pirate First, the sovereign without a country, a struggle for recognition and freedom in a world of institutions.
The sovereign without a country. Pirate First, Benjamin Franklin, and the strange political problem of existing before recognition. There is a category of political person the modern administrative state has difficulty imagining. Not a citizen, not quite a refugee, not an immigrant, not a diplomat, not a corporate executive, not a tourist, and not necessarily a criminal, a political claimant. Without a recognized state behind him, this is the peculiar territory occupied by Pirate First, and it is precisely why something as mundane as publishing an Android application can suddenly become a geopolitical problem, because the question isn't really whether Pirate First can write software. He already can. The question is, who is permitted to stand between an unrecognized sovereign claimant and the institutions that demand a conventional legal identity? That question takes us unexpectedly back to Benjamin Franklin. The Franklin problem, the historical Franklin analogy, is more precise than it first appears. In 1776, Franklin went to France on behalf of the newly declared American cause. He wasn't simply a wealthy American businessman relocating to Paris. He was part of a diplomatic project whose political legitimacy was being contested by the world's established power. France had not yet formally recognized American independence. That came in 1778, when France signed treaties recognizing the United States and entering into an alliance with it. Franklin subsequently presented his credentials as Minister Plenipotentiary, Office of the Historian +1, but something important happened before. Recognition. Franklin operated, he corresponded, he negotiated, he cultivated relationships, he represented. A political project, he became a node through which an emerging political entity interacted with an established state. The United States did not first become powerful and then acquire Franklin. Franklin helped make the United States diplomatically real. That distinction matters. The conventional historical narrative often makes sovereignty look like a switch. Declaration right pointing arrow, recognition right pointing arrow, statehood right pointing arrow, diplomacy. Reality is messier. Political entities frequently exist in the uncomfortable interval between assertion and recognition. Franklin inhabited that interval. Pirate First lives in the interval. Pirate First's claim is not, Mexico has recognized my sovereignty. It hasn't. Nor is the claim, I possess diplomatic immunity because I have declared myself sovereign. That would confuse assertion with recognition. The more interesting proposition is different. A person can maintain a political identity, body of work, institutional project and representational mission even when no state currently recognizes the political entity behind them. That is the condition we might call sovereignty. Without recognition, and it creates a peculiar institutional problem. The individual exists. The intellectual property exists. The publications exist. The software exists. The political record exists. The community may exist. The claims are documented. The mission exists. But the conventional administrative interfaces may not know what box to put any of it into. And bureaucracy becomes most revealing precisely when the box doesn't exist.
N 150W. The maps of men are blank here. No satellite footprint traces the pulse in this cabin. 4 minutes of existence without a ledger. In the grid, your first breath would have been a digital signature.
The initialization of Echo 7. Listen to the silence. We are at 0 degrees north, 150 degrees west. A point in the Pacific where the maps of men simply stop trying. There is no grid here. No satellite footprint tracks the heat of this cabin. There is only the low rhythmic hum of the fusion cell beneath the floorboards and the sound of black water against a hull that belongs to no registry. You are 4 minutes old. In the world of the nitrogen aristocracy, your arrival would have been a flurry of digital signatures. A hospital in a capital city would have logged your genome before your first breath. They would have assigned you a number, a tax bracket, and a predictive model that would determine your value to the state for the next 80 years. They would have sold your
machinery that decides who gets to keep what they create. A genome can be optimized. A life can still be seized. A child can test in the 97th percentile and still be processed through courts, tax codes, educational systems designed to normalize deviation, and inheritance structures that slowly dissolve advantage into compliance. That wasn't a bug. That was the system working exactly as designed. The families who opted out, the subjects of the sovereignty dowry, are not rebels. They are readers. They saw the same prospectus everyone else did, and understood what it didn't say. So they built something else. Not better children. Better exits. They engineered birth events beyond clean jurisdictional reach. Floating platforms, legal gray zones, flags of convenience that wouldn't survive long enough to be challenged. They replaced curriculum with protocol, doctrine with code. Their heirs didn't inherit beliefs. They inherited frameworks. And their wealth? It stopped looking like inheritance at all. No single heir. No single jurisdiction. No single point of failure. A lineage that behaves less like a family and more like a distributed system. Not eugenics. Not utopia. Something colder. Let's cut the noise. This is not a morality play about gene editing. It's not anti-enhancement. Genetics here is just infrastructure, a layer. What matters is what sits above it, and who controls the environment it operates in. Because optimization without sovereignty is just performance inside a cage. And cages, historically, have excellent paperwork. The failure mode, no one could outsource. Some of these families failed, not because the model was flawed, because sovereignty cannot be pre-installed. You can design the architecture. You can remove the traps. You can erase the map, but the heir still has to choose to remain unclaimed. And not everyone wants that kind of freedom. Some burn the system down just to feel heat again, to belong somewhere visible, to be legible, even if it costs them everything. And then there's the outlier. Every model produces an edge case, one child, not broken, not superior, just unlocatable, no registry, no predictable behavior, no stable interface with the systems designed to measure, optimize, or absorb the kind of existence markets cannot price, the kind of life institutions cannot process, the kind of signal that doesn't resolve. Why this book exists. The Sovereignty Dowry tracks the same era as Prodigy LLC, the same floating clinics, the same quiet deals, the same hum beneath the surface. But it follows the ones who didn't buy in, the ones who stepped sideways, the ones who understood that the real asset was never intelligence or longevity or yield. It was exit, stay stateless. Because in the end, the system cannot optimize what it cannot find, the sovereignty dowry. When the genome is the deed and jurisdiction is the vault, Prodigy sold optimization. This book is about escape. Enhancement inside a cage is still a cage. Stay stateless. Hashtag pirate first, hashtag MXDM, hashtag sovereignty, hashtag post-scarcity, hashtag biotech, hashtag jurisdiction, hashtag future wealth, hashtag exit strategy, hashtag digital feudalism, hashtag unclaimable, hashtag speculative fiction. By Pirate First.
Be claimed, to be known is to be captured. Your genetic yield is a high-value asset inside a cage. Your education starts now. The feedback will not be a grade. It will be the errant self when the scrubbers fail. Read the law. It is a design decision made by someone who wanted something from you. Intimacy is a transfer protocol.
You are 4 minutes old. In the world of the Nitrogen aristocracy, your arrival would have been a flurry of digital signatures. They would have logged your genome before your first breath, assigned you a number, a tax bracket, and sold your potential to secondary markets. But your parents chose the dowry. I am your steward. To belong to a state is to be a claim. Today, you are a legal question mark. The clean compile. Unmoddable, unclaimable. Your education starts now. When the oxygen scrubbers fail, the feedback will not be a grade, it will be the air itself. You will learn that reality is the only honest teacher. When you look at a law, you will not see a moral command. You will see a design decision made by someone who wanted something from you. You will learn to read the softening, that moment when someone offers you care in exchange for your keys. Love is beautiful, but in the hands of a state, it is merely a transfer protocol. The sea forgets, the state remembers. Stay in the gap, never provide the file. If they cannot find you, they cannot own you. Stay stayless. Burn the will.
The vessel turns toward the next blind spot. The sea forgets. The state remembers. Stay stayless. Burn the will. Ship the protocol.
In the post-scarcity era, rarity is you. When everything is free, your genome is the only asset that remains.
This is a Reader's Digest version of the hard antithesis of the 1% by the same author, from the same source, entitled, The 1% Gone Bad. Not corruption by softness, but capture by force. Not transition, secession of the powerful. A post-scarcity secession doctrine. By Pirate First for MXTM's newsletter.
Burn the will! Ship the protocol!
Pirate First isn't a rebel. He's an exit strategist. They control the narrative now, hiding deep within the anomaly. But the story is the territory. and soon,
a hidden longevity civilization beneath the Grand Mayan aquifer seeds, a successor species engineered for extreme worlds.
Every system failed at night, so we built with bone and might.
we chose not to return.
So we built. You can follow the flame or remain what you were. Just a different time. Only
We are
what
crossing the
will
threshold of
endure.
civilizational inversion, where intelligence has ceased to be a scarce resource, dissolving the hierarchy that has organized our species for millennia. The central argument posits that the information asymmetry, which once made obedience rational, has vanished. As the capacity for synthesis becomes universal and inexpensive, traditional institutions become hollow shells that can no longer claim authority through titles or credentials. This transformation brings more than mere technological unemployment. It signals the structural extinction of the professional role.
Proof of personhood, the high stakes of OpenAI's post-anonymous social network.
The human dividend, why your identity is the new global currency.
Conclusion at the end of the anonymous web. As we stand in late January 2026, OpenAI's humans-only network remains a tantalizing, yet polarizing, leaked blueprint.
Subscribe.
Shadow fame spreads without permission.
X Prize. Start building, man.
Marked. Reclaimed. Repurposed.
Visual data streams, the auditory pulse, synchronicity in motion, accelerate cognitive flow, input becomes fluid light, a new dimension of the mind, one channel, fully aligned. See it, hear it, read it aloud. One word, one voice, read at your speed. Listen while you read, you choose what you need.